As they say, you live and you learn. Or in my case, I die and I don't learn. Like I mentioned before, back at the end of 100 days, some struggles don't ever really go away, and mine definitely didn't. I was still pushing the same stone, still expecting the hill to eventually disappear. I thought 100 days was rough, but in 200 days, it got so much worse.
200 days, boys. 200 freaking days. It is day 100. Make a note. Day 100, make a note. First death to hyperthermia on the next 100 days. That's just, you know, driving the point home that we need to move.
I needed to relocate. Either I would build a new base from scratch, or co-opt an existing structure. Whatever I chose, it had to meet a few non-negotiable conditions. A temperate biome, proximity to a village, and access to a waystone for travel. I also imposed a soft time limit on myself. No more than 15 days spent on relocation and construction. If it dragged on longer than that, I would pivot to something else to avoid wasting time. I began scouting and quickly found a location I liked near city structure. There was a dragon in the area, but with careful routing and restraint, it seemed possible to avoid it for the time being. That night, a blood moon rose, preventing sleep. Instead of waiting it out, I used the time to loot a nearby battle tower. I gained a few levels, but finished the night in poor health.
Jesus. Damn. Oh, they're lobbing arrows at me. Look at all those mobs.
On day 101, I discovered another nearby village with a waystone, one without the immediate existential threat of a dragon looming over it. That alone made travel significantly safer. With that established, I began preparing the base site. I gathered the tools I needed, cleared the trees, and started reshaping the surrounding area.
Not sure why I brought 4 logs instead of a crafting table, but it is what it is. Make our first axe, and then let's just get to clearing these trees.
Later in the day, I killed a rare zombie that dropped enough heart crystal shards to craft a heart container, increasing my maximum health. By nightfall, the area was fully cleared, and I slept through the night to move on to the next day. Day 102 was spent planning the layout of the base.
Yeah, that works. That works. That's not bad. Just need to finish it off.
My initial idea was to build along the cliff face, but after some thought, I scrapped that idea. Instead, I chose to dig directly into the mountain and construct an exterior entryway.
Of course. Yeah, we can build into the mountain too. Which, you know, Rlcraft building into a mountain, is just a good idea, so.
Material gathering in Rlcraft is tedious at the best of times, and carving out the interior of a mountain was far more efficient. It also came with the added benefit of naturally stable temperatures year-round. On day 103, I traveled to a nearby village to collect non-expiring torches, which would simplify interior construction by removing the need for constant relighting. I gathered them cautiously, staying mindful of the nearby dragon. Once I had enough torches, I began digging into the mountainside to carve out the base interior. While excavating, I broke into a natural cave system. With some additional shaping, it was clear the cave could serve as the main base structure, saving time and effort. I refined the interior layout in my head, and by nightfall, I placed a bed and slept in the new base for the first time. I spent most of day 104 running supplies back and forth between the old base and the new one, gathering materials to construct a storage wall. Once it was complete, I finally had an organized space to store my items. The process took most of the day, and before I could begin transferring everything, night fell. I ended the day sleeping inside the new base.
Ended day 104. Got our storage wall pretty much finished. Not perfectly finished, but for what we need right now, it's finished enough. Just gonna sleep in the base again, pass the time, and then get into the next day.
By day 105, it was clear the base construction was well ahead of schedule. I decided to give myself until day 110 before pivoting my focus elsewhere. Wood quickly became a bottleneck. It was tedious to gather, and I needed a substantial amount to finish the storage wall properly. I teleported from village to village, searching for wood depots, and eventually returned to our previous snow village. There I was assaulted and killed by a frozen beast. I wasn't overly concerned. Based on the location, my dropped items would be safe for the time being. I spent much of day 106 grinding XP so I could teleport back to the snow village.
I guess I got my
During this time, the reptile ruckus event triggered, but I avoided it entirely by staying airborne.
Reptile ruckus. Scaly and scandalous.
Here.
Once I had enough levels, I returned to the snow village and successfully recovered my lost items. I also took the time to start properly marking and organizing waystones, noting nearby threats such as dragons. This was a direct correction of one of my biggest stakes from the first 100 days, where poor labeling led to repeat missed teleports. With ample wood collected, I returned to the base, added signs to the storage wall for better organization, and spent the rest of the night inside. On day 107, I began transferring the remaining items from my old base to the new one.
Let's make sure we've got in what we can. It's a lot of diamond tubes, brother. I didn't realize I had so many.
I also formed a tentative plan to deal with a nearby dragon later, which would free up the waystones and make the surrounding area much safer. I continued transporting items through the night, taking advantage of the cooler temperatures. By the end of the night, a significant portion of my gear had been successfully relocated.
Of course, my wool armor, which I love so much. And then my diamond armor, which I also love so much.
I decided to test the waters on day 108 by attempting to kill the nearby dragon using some disposable gear. The attempt failed, unsurprisingly.
Yep, I'm not really surprised.
And I was left waiting for my rock to respawn. With nothing else to do, I spent the remainder of the day brainstorming potential dragon slaying strategies, such as attacking it while it slept or using the summoned Aegises to fight it. On day 109, I started acting on this strategy by searching for my summoning staff, but after enough time passed, I accepted that it was lost. I then spent much of the day at my old Gru farm trying to obtain ender pearls so I could craft a replacement. By the end of the day, I'd only gathered a single pearl, far less than I hoped for, but enough to move forward with my plan.
Nice.
On day 110, I made a major discovery in battle tower looting. I discovered a method that allowed me to safely loot the top floor chests without aggroing the golem, finally giving me reliable access to some high value loot. Up until this point, I had no dependable way to secure battle tower rewards, so this felt like a meaningful step forward. Back at the base, I added an overflow chest for unsorted items, allowing me to offload loot quickly during expeditions without disrupting the main storage system. Later that night, I flew out to scout for additional battle towers to exploit the new strategy. Instead, I died to hypothermia, forcing an abrupt turn to base. On day 111, I set out to fully capitalize on the new battle tower looting method. My goal was to target high-value items, baubles, potions, ender pearls, diamonds, anything that could meaningfully accelerate my progress. I planned to refine the strategy by using a hopper beneath a top floor chest to extract the loot more safely. Before leaving, I moved dirt from the troll tusk farm to give myself a reliable supply of building blocks for the expeditions ahead. With that done, I crafted the hopper and set out, planning not only to loot towers, but also to mark villages with large wood depots so I could return later when resources became an issue. I found the first battle tower of the expedition and successfully looted it. The strategy worked pretty much exactly as intended, confirming that this approach would be the key to progress during this next phase.
Speaking of big sea serpents, that is a... Jesus. That guy could probably kill me. Oh, but there's a battle tower. Good.
On day 112, I continued looting battle towers, stopping occasionally at villages to collect enchanted books for later use. While the strategy itself was sound, some towers were simply inaccessible due to nearby sea serpents, dragons, or chests being locked. The setback came when I was killed by a cave spider which was camping on the side of a battle tower wall.
From where? Oh, it must have been on the side. Ugh.
I lost the loot from the expedition. While it wasn't catastrophic, it was still a step backward and particularly frustrating because it forced me to wait for my rock to respawn. It was a familiar reminder that even good strategies could unravel quickly. On day 113, I adjusted the looting strategy to compensate for the loss of the hopper. Even so, I narrowly escaped death after failing to follow the loot steps precisely.
That's not what I wanted to do, dumb. Oh, wait a second. I realized what I did wrong. Oh, I'm always an idiot.
The close call reinforced just how rigid the process needed to be. I ended the day in low health without healing items, in a very fragile state.
But now, oh, I'd like some healing items, but I can't find any.
On day 114, I continued scouting, restocking healing supplies at a village along the way.
Oh, how am I still alive, bro?
I also had a close encounter with a fire dragon, which reinforced the need for caution. During my search, I discovered a mega battle tower. I began planning ways to exploit its perceived weaknesses and successfully broke the Vex spawners at the top. I acted a waste stone nearby to ensure quick access and recovery in the event of death.
Because mega battle towers, if I remember correctly, do not have tower golems and nothing stopping you from opening the loot, and also just have really good loot in general, so...
Day 115. I established a small forward base at the top of the mega battle tower, only to discover that it still contained bosses, stronger and much tougher to deal with than those in battle towers from the look of it. In retrospect, I have no idea why I thought mega battle towers wouldn't have bosses, but at the time, the realization was just slightly more irritating than it really was enlightening. I concluded that the tower was simply too chaotic to tackle effectively at this stage and reverted to using random deaths as a scouting method to locate additional towers quickly.
Alright, day 115. It just seems like the mega battle tower is too much just random stuff going on to actually be a viable thing to loot right now, so just thinking, since I don't have anything on me, I'm just gonna go to some random deaths for a little bit. Probably the quickest way to find... Oh, you're kidding me. The game is just... The game is just taunting me at this point.
I set another pivot deadline for day 120. If this approach failed to produce results, I would do something else. I also noted one hard-earned lesson in the process of looting another tower, that glass blocks are terrible for blocking a battle tower's golem's line of sight. I'm also not sure why I thought that would work.
I don't know if I'm gonna live this out. Or not. Yeah, that is annoying. Glass blocks don't work. Keep that in mind.
On day 116, I actually discovered a valuable piece of equipment. Aussie liner leggings.
Oh, we just found an Aussie liner. We don't want to lose that. Come on.
If I could secure them, they would effectively solve my temperature problems for the remainder of the run. I also learned that pirate ships were excellent sources of experience thanks to their large number of easily breakable zombie spawners. I continued conducting flyby looting runs on battle towers to grab whatever loot was safely accessible. It was during this stretch that I experienced one of the only moments in this run I would describe as genuinely unfair.
Accessible valuable loot, so... Oh, and I died, of course, because of lag, because I just got immediately torpedoed by about 6 skeleton shots that just lagged out, so that's really nice.
At least it felt at the time. A lag spike disrupted my movement and I was killed by skeletons, and I lost the Aussie liner in the process. That loss made something very painfully clear. My survivability was still nowhere near where it needed to be. I resolved to shift my focus toward grinding XP, with the explicit goal of reaching 20 defense so I could equip the Tide Guardian armor. I ended the day in a random village, committed to prioritizing experience over loot. At this point, by day 117, I was spending an unfortunate amount of time waiting for my rock to respawn. I kept finding myself in bad situations, dying and taking the rock with me in the process. I repeatedly noted that I should dismiss it to prevent this, and just as consistently, forgot to do so. I came across a village that left such a strong impression on me that I ended up naming it the Stupid Village, describing the reason for doing it so in my raw notes simply as having a deep-seated hatred for it. I crafted earplugs to negate the effect of a siren song when approaching the lower floors of a nearby battle tower, and then died almost immediately anyway. That death forced me to confront a bad habit I had carried over for the first 100 days, choosing not to wear armor. It had worked before, but now it was actively sabotaging my survivability. As they say, you live and you learn, or in my case, I die and I don't learn. Day 118. I continued looting, finding nothing particularly noteworthy.
I don't know if I've ever gone this long without finding a village, dude. They're like ultra Day 118, having a lot of trouble finding a village. That's just kind of surprising. Usually it's not that hard.
During this stretch, I came up with a new idea, stashing semi-valuable items in villages near waystones instead of carrying everything with me. That way I could retrieve loot later without constantly risking it. Naturally, after having this idea, I proceeded to have terrible luck actually finding any villages. Toward the end of the day, I found what I believed to be a rare pillager city structure. And, finally, a nearby village. I stored my loot there and slept through the night. On day 119, I resolved to try and attempt to loot the rare battle tower. I prepared as carefully as possible, assembling the best gear I had available at the time. Full diamond armor, a diamond sword, pickaxe, bow, tower shield, building blocks, chests, 2 stacks of arrows, healing items, food, and a bed. After preparing, I set up a small forward base near the tower, placed a chest for loot storage, and slept through the night in preparation for the attempt. On day 120, I entered the battle tower. The fight was immediately intense. Vex, skeletons, zombies, everything at once. I quickly discovered that I couldn't break spawners to disable the threat because a quote-unquote powerful enemy was nearby. Moments later, I was one-shot by a Vex.
You get one shot by Vex? Huh? Okay, so the battle tower is literally impossible.
After recovering my items and doing some research, I learned that the tower contained an end crystal, and until it was destroyed, blocks and spawners couldn't be broken. This presented me with a dilemma, because on every other battle tower, you could break spawners to disable the threat. I understood the mechanic to prevent exploitation, but my intention wasn't to exploit it. I legitimately wanted to fight through the tower and loot the structure. Without being able to break spawners, though, it was nearly impossible to do so at my stage. I briefly considered, and actually did, switch to peaceful mode, break the crystal, and then start the tower over properly. After doing so, however, I didn't feel right.
Oh.
I decided to leave the battle tower entirely, abandoning any loot I had obtained. At this point, bypassing the mechanics, even temporarily, just didn't feel in the spirit of the run so far. By day 121, I realized something important. I was starting to waste time again, just like I had done during large portions of the first 100 days. This was through side quests that were leading nowhere, strategies that looked good on paper, but ultimately served as reminders as to why this game had the reputation it does. I was just wasting time and getting nothing done. I needed to lock in. The goal was simple and non-negotiable. Grind XP and reach 20 defense so I could equip Tide Guardian armor. I moved to the battle tower near my base to start grinding. The tower pushed back immediately. Mobs flanked me from above and below, dropping behind me or funneling through stairwells. The results were mixed, but survivable up to a point. I died once again.
Why did I think that was even a remotely good idea? Oh, I'm so stupid all the time.
Putting my items at risk, but reached 18 out of 20 defense in the process. I was close. I just needed to stay focused. I spent the remainder of the time waiting for my rock to respawn. Day 122, I returned to the battle tower and recovered my most valuable items, though not without difficulty. From there, I continued clearing floors until only the top one remained.
Of course.
While extracting loot from the top floor, I made another procedural mistake and opened the chest too close to the tower, immediately aggroing the golem. I was forced to use a recall potion and escape to preserve my gear. My rock died in the process, pushing me back into another waiting cycle. Despite the mistakes and setbacks, on day 123, the golem actually inadvertently helped me. It destroyed the chest at the top of the tower, leaving the loot exposed and accessible. After collecting what remained, I continued looting towers with XP as a primary objective, closing in on my defense goal. I also crafted Tide Guardian boots and a chest plate, but still needed additional Siren shiny scales and Sea Serpent scales to complete the set. I also crafted a Dragonbone rapier, far from usable at this stage, but nice to have waiting for me. I headed out to gather more shiny scales, acquired what I needed quickly, and returned to base to pass the night. My objectives were clear: 20 defense for Tide Guardian armor, 24 attack for the rapier, and then enchant them to make both sustainable for the long term. Enchantments were going to be the real foundation of survivability. During my travels, I found a floating ship which contained 2 wither skeleton skulls. I collected them. Somewhere in the back of my mind, a larger plan began to take shape, but I wasn't ready to think that far ahead yet. Later, I found a sea serpent and attempted to kill it, but ran out of arrows and was forced to disengage. I returned home for the night, planning to finish the job the next day. On day 125, I returned to the ocean to hunt the serpent, but the original one was gone.
It's not like sea serpents are particularly rare anyway, so...
Instead, I baited a different one onto land and killed it easily.
Hope it stays... Oh, wait, I immediately killed it, so I'm good, never mind.
The skills were enough to complete a full set of armor, albeit mismatched in color. With that done, my next priorities were clear. Finish grinding the required levels and set up an enchanting room. I spent the rest of the night making out its shape inside the base. On day 126, I focused on gathering the remaining materials needed to finish the enchanted room.
Day 126, pretty much finished the enchanting room. Just gotta get everything in order now to actually use it.
On day 127, I decided to take on a mega battle tower for the experience needed, and overall, the process went pretty well. Along the way, I acquired a Bezoar, which negated poison entirely and reduced cave spiders to a little more than free XP, and quickly reached the level requirement to equip Tide Guardian armor, which would be a major upgrade, once it was actually put to use. I continued to push toward 24 attacks so I could finally use a Dragonbone Rapier. Near the end of the day, I trapped a nymph near my small forward base at the battle tower, which granted me access to effectively infinite regeneration. If I played carefully, it dramatically increased my survivability. On day 128, I continued grinding XP. The most notable event was killing a Blight Creeper, which rewarded me with a large burst of experience and additional Heart Crystal shards.
Blight Creeper was killed by decaffeination.
Oh, nice.
Blight Creeper was killed by decaffeination.
On day 129, I killed yet another Blight Creeper and gathered enough shards to craft a heart container, once again increasing my maximum health. I also reached level 20 in attack, marking another milestone. While the tower floors themselves offered little in terms of chest loot, the rare mobs spawning along the way provided solid returns and a steady supply of healing items.
Starting to get a little beat up.
On day 130, I started the day by committing to pushing the grind further, but 2 deaths in quick succession forced me to reconsider.
Yeah, I'm dead.
The returns were starting to diminish, and equipment wear was starting to outpace progress, so by the end of the day I had chosen to withdraw. I returned to my base day 131 and, for the first time, equipped the Tide Guardian armor set. It marked a significant milestone and hopefully a meaningful increase in power. Even so, I was cautious about overusing it. I didn't want the set to break, and I wanted it enchanted before relying on it fully. On day 132, I experimented with a water-based strategy. I returned to the battle tower to continue grinding levels and discovered something important along the way. When wet, Tide Guardian armor grants +1 strength per piece. With the full set on, that meant strength 4, which was enough to shred through mobs. I discovered my nymph had despawned, which made the battle tower risky again. I pushed just long enough to reach the required magic level to place the enchanting table, then disengaged. I confirmed that my enchanting setup could produce max level enchantments with XP, once again being the real bottleneck. I spent the remainder of the day studying a Pixen in my base, and then I turned in for the night.
Gonna spend the rest of the day just sitting in my base studying a Pixen.
Day 133, I placed the Sea Serpent armor back on its stand to preserve it and returned to the Mega Battle Tower to continue grinding levels. Leftover mobs from a Reptile Ruckus event I had forgot to mention provided extra Ender Pearls, and I successfully trapped another nymph nearby, restoring access to near infinite regeneration. Even so, I was still far from invincible, and I died due to poor positioning and spent the night preparing to recover my items in the morning. On day 134, thankfully I recovered my items without issue. They were in a convenient location, and I continued pushing forward. I took special care to deal with witches at range, but still encountered several frustrating situations along the way. Despite that, I managed to fight through each of them.
Okay, complexity's not the worst thing in the world.
Day 135, I attempted to continue, but witches became too disrupted to justify further battle tower grinding. The XP gain slowed as repeated deaths prevented levels from compounding efficiently. I choose to disengage and look for alternative XP sources.
You're kidding me, right?
On day 136, I cycled through familiar territory, searching for battle towers, pirate ships, or any other structure with accessible spawners that could provide reliable experience. During this time, I found a jump boost bauble that reduced fall damage and increased jump height. With inventory space limited, I continued storing my items near the Mega Battle Tower.
I also got a bauble that increases jump height and reduces some fall damage. So now I can jump up about 2 blocks, 2 or 3 block high jumps, which is kind of nifty. Day 136.
I reached level 30, then continued grinding towards level 34 to support multiple level 30 enchantments. I then returned to base and began enchanting the Tide Guardian armor. I enchanted the chestplate with Unbreaking 3, Protection 4, Burning Thorns 3, and Meltdown 2, then followed it with the helmet, Protection 4 and Unbreaking 3. With half of the set enchanted, my XP dropped back to level 27, meaning I would need to grind up another to level 34 again to finish the remaining pieces. On day 138, with enchants still unfinished, I headed back out to loot battle towers and pirate ships. While descending onto a pirate ship, a sea serpent sniped me out of the air, killing me instantly and dropping my items to the bottom of the ocean.
I didn't even see it. That's kinda crazy.
The loss of my baubles was especially concerning, since they had been central to my early success in battle towers. I was forced to wait for my rock to respawn before I could even attempt recovery. On day 139, I was genuinely worried my items were gone for good. I couldn't stay underwater long enough to recover them, and time was working against me. I came up with a last resort. Use my sea serpent armor to recover the items, relying on its natural water-breathing effect. The risk was obvious. If I lost the armor set here, the consequences would be severe. On day 140, I returned to base, retrieved the sea serpent armor, and made another trip back to the recovery site. This time, thankfully, I succeeded. I recovered my miner's ring in Beazor, though the red balloon, which boosted my jump height, was lost. Afterward, I returned to grinding XP and found a recall potion, which gave me a much-needed emergency escape option. During this stretch, I also learned the downside of the Meltdown enchantment. While it caused explosive damage to enemies periodically, it drained armor durability at a very unsustainable rate. That realization settled in. The chestplate would need to be replaced. Day 141, I pushed hard until I had enough levels, then teleported out and enchanted the remaining armor pieces. On my boots, I got the Sliding Enchantment, Advanced Projectile Protection 1, Unbreaking 3, and High Jump 2. And on the leggings, I got Avenge Protection 1, Advanced Thorns 3, and Evasion. With that, the Tide Guardian set was fully enchanted, though the chestplate was still slated for replacement. I also crafted a Diamond Strengthened longbow to help with range damage, particularly for hunting sea serpents to gather scales. At this point, my goals were clear. I needed to hunt sea serpents and gain enough levels to use the rapier. On day 142, I continued working towards those goals, focusing on meeting the rapier's stat requirements and gathering XP to enchant it, and enchant the replacement chest piece. I was scatterbrained that day. While supposedly hunting sea serpents, I wandered inland and ran into a dragon, and realized I was completely off task.
Hunting for sea serpents in the middle of the continent on land. I'm not sure why I'm here doing that.
During my travels, I discovered what I believe to be a Shivaxi monument, or at least some kind of Rlcraft monument. I'm not entirely sure what it officially is. A troll guarded the entrance, and I killed it and collected 3 troll leather, items that would have been far more useful during the first 100 days.
There was a troll inside, and I killed it. The troll is kind of kind of pissing me off because it dropped 3 troll leather, which is the exact thing I needed, you know, the last 100 days.
Inside, I found extremely valuable loot. An ice dragon bone saber, a reinforced diamond shield, and a nearly complete set of dragon scale armor, missing only the helmet. I chose to store everything, partly because of stat requirements and partly out of balance concerns. I hadn't even killed a dragon yet, and using dragon scale armor before earning it felt wrong, even if it would still take levels to equip.
So day 143, we're heading back to that monument structure to see if there's anything else valuable we can pick up there, since there was already quite a bit of valuables.
On day 143, I returned to the monument to search for additional loot. Found a heart container, but nothing else of value, and I left the monument behind. While traveling afterward, I killed a beast sea serpent, netting more than enough scales for additional armor. I also rediscovered an old battle tower I had previously attempted and secured some extra loot from it.
I've been here before, bro?
By the end of the day, I had reached the XP levels I was aiming for. I escaped to a nearby city structure, but couldn't find a bed and had to wait out the night. At this point, I committed the next 20 days or so entirely to upgrading my gear and survivability. I killed another beach sea serpent as well and collected even more scales. Despite the progress, I was in a fragile state, low on healing items and one mistake away from losing ground. Day 144. For the first time, I seriously considered what it would take to craft a potion ring of regeneration. That thought inevitably led to another, the Wither. I began to mentally trace the steps required to take it down, and what would need to make that fight viable. I used the recall potion to return home safely. With the scales I had gathered, I crafted a replacement chestplate and enchanted it. For the first time, I had a fully enchanted armor set that was usable. The enchantments weren't perfectly optimized, but that was acceptable. The Tide Guardian armor set was always meant to be transitional. Strong enough to carry me forward, not something I would rely on forever. I shifted my focus back to combat progression, grinding levels so I could enchant the Dragonbone Rapier and my bow. The idea of fighting the Wither was becoming more serious now. A regeneration ring could change everything. Still, I held back. The rapier needed to be usable first. Rushing the fight now would only invite another setback. Even though the Wither fight would have to wait, I could still prepare for it. On day 145, as I traveled, I began collecting Wither skeleton skulls, whenever the opportunity presented itself, which would save time later. Along the way, I continued killing sea serpents and mermaids and probing battle towers, aborting immediately if the risk climbed too high.
I almost made a deadly mistake.
I also started actively scouting villages in search of high-tier enchantments, mending, advanced protection, or anything with a supreme modifier. Day 146. Deep winter had fully set in, and temperature once again became a serious problem. I found additional Wither skeleton skulls, which brought the total to 6, and teleported home to secure anything of real value that I had gathered. While still important, sea serpent armor had somewhat become expendable, thanks to my growing stockpile of scales and the ease at which I could kill more sea serpents. On day 147, I continued grinding skills, and by the end of the day had fully confirmed the viability of Strength 4 while wet.
Oh no, oh no. Oh no, that was a bad thing. I'm okay. Bitch, I'm the greatest.
I killed a siren easily, using nothing more than an iron sword, and gained the final level required to use a Dragonbone Rapier. On day 148, I began thinking more seriously about longer-term goals. A potion ring of regeneration was becoming a priority, ideally by day 175 or 80, though I stayed loosely committed to that time goal, knowing how unpredictable Rlcraft can be. During my travels, I found a village with a librarian offer 2 mending books. I returned home afterward to handle housekeeping and organize my inventory. On the morning of day 149, I finished organizing the base, crafted an anvil, and applied mending to my leggings and chestplate. With that done, I returned to the far stretches of the world and continued grinding experience and searching for other valuable materials, including glowing ingots that would be useful for later. At this point, when wet, battle towers, and even their golems had become trivial. The remaining weaknesses were obvious: no natural regeneration, and continued vulnerability to extreme temperatures. To address the latter, I would need an Aussie liner. On day 150, I continued to break spawners and looted multiple battle towers, pushing my level to about 36. I wasn't able to return home. The distance was too great and the cold too severe. I spent the night moving between structures just to survive. Hypothermia had become a serious, ever-present limitation once again. That night, I slept in a remote shack to pass the time. On day 151, I crafted a dragon-reinforced longbow and enchanted it. I needed an upgrade to my range damage, and since I had become increasingly relying on it for dealing with witches and sea serpents, anything that sped that process up was a benefit, even if the enchantments themselves were only decent and far from optimized. I didn't yet have the agility levels required to use it, so that became my next target. On day 152, I traveled to a nearby dungeon to start clearing it and properly test my gear for the first time. Within the first few rooms, it was obvious how much my survivability had improved. Healing, however, was still a limiting factor, which once again reinforced the need to eventually kill the Wither and acquire a ring of regeneration. I gained the necessary agility levels required to use the bow, and decided to continue grinding XP throughout the dungeon. By day 153, I had gained a substantial amount of experience and survived several close encounters, though nothing especially dangerous. I eventually left the dungeon with a large level surplus and a noticeable boost in confidence. I started out the day on day 154 by returning to the nearby battle tower to finish off the golem with my new bow. It still wasn't going down, so I decided to commit and engage it directly.
Fucking battle tower golem.
With the strength buff from the Tide Guardian armor, I absolutely shredded the golem in head-to-head combat. The fight confirmed something important. When I approached encounters deliberately and stacked advantages in my favor, for instance water negating its fire and explosion damage while boosting my own, I could dominate even dangerous fights. I returned to the Mega Battle Tower afterward and found several useful valuables. This included a Ring of Overclocking, which reduced my movement speed and made me immune to slowness, and the Stone of Inertia Null, which negates fall damage and kinetic damage. I chose to withdraw after that rather than push further, noticing how low my gear durability was becoming. Securing mending was clearly the next major priority. On day 155, before setting out, I built another portal to briefly enter, survey the area, and collect soul sand while it was on my mind.
Might as well just grab the soul sand I need. Day 155, gonna briefly head into the nether and see if I can quickly grab the soul sand I need. If I can't, I'm not gonna worry about it though, because I know the nether's a dangerous place.
Afterward, I returned to the overworld and resumed the search for mending books. Along the way, I obtained another heart container, increasing my maximum health, and spent the night in a small shack.
Oh, wait a second, because we can't catch up Rlcraft. Oh, nice.
On day 156, the poop party event triggered.
Poop party! What a stench!
Day 156, the poop party event in Rlcraft has begun. What the poop party is, I don't know, but I'm so curious. I'm gonna go down to the ground to see if I can figure out what the poop party event is in Rlcraft.
Which amounted to a group of monkeys throwing fecal matter at me. How classy. Later that day, my situation escalated into a survival problem. I nearly died of hypothermia and was forced to burn recall potions just to stay alive. I eventually found refuge in a warm biome and spent the night in a village with a waystone. On day 157, I returned to my base with the intention of swapping back to wool armor for warmth and applied a few enchantments to my rapier. The nether portal in my base had become a reoccurring problem, periodically spawning nether mobs inside. I chose to ignore it for the time being, pure laziness on my part. Temperatures were too severe to safely travel back outside at night, so I stayed inside the base and waited it out. I left my base on the morning of day 158 with a hopper and a vague sense of optimism. My main objective for the expedition was finding mending books and an Aussie liner. I found an infinity book instead, useful but not what I needed. Night temperatures remained dangerous, even with wool armor, so I'd had to retreat to a nearby lighthouse for warmth, rest, and recover.
Day 158 ended it off sleeping in a lighthouse structure for warmth as well as health recovery.
On day 159, the search continued with little to show for it. I looted a battle tower, but it yielded neither mending nor an Aussie liner. My frustration with the wool armor grew. It failed to provide sufficient warmth in rain and snow and offered significantly reduced protection overall.
No! 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 Let me sleep, let me sleep. So at least when I die, I'll respawn here. Come on, night can't come fast enough! Day 159. I died at the end of the day, but hypothermia.
As a result, I died of hypothermia, triggering yet another recovery situation. Thankfully, I had the presence of mind to store most of my items before dying. At least what was in my inventory was safe.
This is worse than hypothermia the first 100 days, like literally. What am I supposed to do? What can I even do? I'm in a house. There should be, like, it shouldn't just immediately kill me.
Hypothermia became inescapable on day 160. Indoors, outdoors, in jungles, none of it mattered. The cold would set in almost immediately. That's when I realized something critical. While I had stored most of my valuables, I hadn't removed my baubles when I died. They were now sitting on the floor of the structure where I died at risk of despawning. I didn't know exactly where I was, and attempting to recover them blindly risked loading the chunk and losing them permanently.
I'm thinking up a strategy. It's day 160, it's the night. I found another similar structure to the one I died in and, you know, left my items at. I know it's not the same one because I've located it before. But if I can sleep and set my spawn, then I'm in the ocean near a battle tower, and I can loot the lower floors and pray that one of them might contain a antique atlas, which then I can use to navigate properly.
I also discovered that antique atlases don't carry over, and even if I were to find another one, it would be useless in helping me navigate back to my items. Day 161. I was now flying blind. I only vaguely remembered the direction I had traveled from the lighthouse and couldn't navigate reliably using landmarks alone. To make matters worse, I found an Aussie liner. If I had found it earlier, this entire situation could have been avoided. I could have applied it to my sea serpent armor and never been forced into the defensive compromise of wool armor in the first place. I secured the Aussie liner in a chest, but without any frame of reference forward or backward, it did me very little good. Once again, the game dangled progress directly in front of me and still made it inaccessible. That night, I made another mistake. While freezing, I tried to make the room more livable and broke the wrong bed. Hypothermia then set in, and I went to go reset my status effects before I realized the mistake. I respawned in a completely random location with no frame of reference and no access to anything. No Aussie liner, no stored loot, and no clear path back to my base. I was in a very tight situation on day 162. The cold prevented me from traveling far, and it would kill me very quickly, and it also blocked meaningful XP gain. Most crops were out of season, so I couldn't even rely on breaking them to gather experience for travel. It was here that I fully realized how catastrophic it would be to permanently lose my items, especially my baubles. My bow and my sword were valuable, but without question, the baubles were irreplaceable. Their modifiers mattered just as much as the effects themselves, and I wasn't even entirely sure where some of them had come from or how rare they truly were. The urgency of my situation was becoming impossible to ignore, and I was getting really annoyed at this point.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I don't have my basil. Oh, I don't have my baubles anymore. Prot 4. Hey, sure. Who doesn't love a good Prot 4, buddy? On second thought, the loss was kind of catastrophic because I also lost all of my good baubles. I'm just in awe of how stupid I can be in this game, bro. It's like impressive how dumb I am. Like legitimately impressive. Like I don't know if like in the world there exists somebody who is as dumb as me.
On day 163, I eventually reached a battle tower near a village in a desert biome. It was warm enough there to survive long enough to grind the XP I needed to teleport back to my base. Once stabilized, I began preparing for a recovery expedition. I gathered large amounts of healing items to brute force survival against hyperthermia, secured a recall potion, and assembled a replacement set of wool armor. I also made the decision to rewatch my footage to pinpoint the exact location of my items. At this point, permanent loss would have been devastating. It might have ended the run outright, or at least the very least delayed it significantly. The stress was becoming overwhelming. The loss itself, combined with the recovery process, was more painful than anything I had experienced in the first 100 days. Before I set out on day 164, I made a mental note to not sleep in any beds or activate any waystones on my way out to recover my items. That way, I could teleport directly back once I had required them, if need be. Afterward, I began the recovery operation in earnest, moving as quickly as possible to maximize daily travel, the only time it was even remotely safe to do so. I reached the lighthouse and pressed onward. Familiar landmarks like battle towers confirmed I was on the correct path. That night, the weather started to deteriorate. With no proper shelter available, I had to spend the night in a tree, which was the only nearby protection from the storm. Both rain and snow rendered wool armor nearly useless at any time of the day, but at night, their lethality increased tenfold. On the morning of day 165, I set out again. Despite the rain and cold slowing my progress, I made it back to the recovery site and successfully retrieved my items.
Please. Just have my items. Oh my god. Oh. Thank you. 1, 2, 3. I'm missing something. Okay, no, I'm not. Oh, thank you, God.
A wave of relief washed over me. At this point, rain had become my primary enemy. I kept a recall potion on standby at all times, and because I hadn't sent or slept in any beds along the way, I had a clean, direct escape route back to my base if anything went wrong. The plan now was to exploit that advantage, find an Aussie liner, and return home immediately. Hypothermia was still a constant threat, so I remained extremely cautious about temperature management throughout this phase. Now, on day 166, I kept pushing onward despite the cold and mostly mediocre loot. During this stretch, I discovered a useful workaround toward my issue, and that while it was raining, placing even a single block above my head was enough to negate its effects. That gave me a reliable way to continue looting battle towers even during storms. That night, however, I was once again forced to spend it in a tree, waiting for the weather to clear enough to travel safely. But it had felt like the worst of the temperature threat might finally be easing. By day 167, my morale was starting to wear thin. Aussie liners seemed plentiful, only when I had no practical way to get them back to my base. It was also here that I began to suspect the hoppers were actively hindering my looting, and I more or less confirmed it. For reasons I still do not fully understand, hoppers would not extract all items from battle tower chests. I wasn't sure was this to Rlcraft's anti-cheese measures or simply how hoppers interact with unstackable or modded items. Either way, the strategy wasn't working. I decided to return to my base to regroup, apply the infinity enchantment to my bow, and spend the night organizing and preparing for another expedition. I resumed the search on day 168. In desert biomes, at least, it was warm enough to move freely, and with the decision to abandon hoppers entirely, I was cautiously optimistic that I could find an Aussie liner quickly. Later that day, I took on a battle tower golem and killed it successfully, though I finished the fight in poor health. It was here that everything went wrong. I died. Again. There isn't really much I can say here. Just listen to this.
I just can't leave well enough alone. I just can't. For the life of me. I just can't physically do it. I just can't physically leave it. I just can't physically go, oh, look at that thing. I probably shouldn't mess with it. I just can't do it. I just can't. It's just physically impossible for me to look at something and say, ooh, maybe I shouldn't run headfirst into the battle tower that is actively blowing up in my face. I just can't do it. It's impossible. It's literally impossible for me to look at something that is actively a threat to my life and just be like, don't do there. Don't go there. It's not worth it. It's just going to get you killed. You are only going to lose your shit, both in game and in real life. There is no point. There is no benefit. There is no freaking anything to it. There is no plus side, upside. There's nothing. There is nothing for you there. So why do you keep going to it? Why? Nothing for you. Nothing. Nothing. Zilch. Nada. Nothing. Nothing.
Day 169. I carried on despite the extreme distress caused by losing my items. I genuinely felt like I was having a mental breakdown at this point, both because of my mistakes and because hypothermia had once again become an immediate, constant threat without my wool armor. I was losing it. In my notes, I explicitly wrote that it, quote, felt like a sledgehammer was taken to the kneecaps, while at the same time my fingernails were being torn out one by one. The stress was acute in the moment, the loss of my items, but also chronic. This was the cumulative weight of deep winter, cold, and environmental pressures that had been relentlessly bearing down on me for the better part of these last 100 days. That evening, however, I found the battle tower I had died in. I began recovering my items, and what felt like the universe dangling some form of mercy in front of me, I also found Aussie liner leggings. Thankfully, finally, whatever. I was too overstimulated to feel relieved. As night fell, mobs began posing a serious threat. At that point, I made a decision. As the night closed in, with my mental state completely fried, I switched the game to peaceful mode, to recover my items. I didn't care anymore. My mind was fried, my will to play was fried, and if I had died right there, I would have quit, immediately. After recovering everything, I returned home and locked the world difficulty to normal, which would permanently prevent me from using peaceful mode again. That was my compromise. I stopped playing for the night after that. Day 170. With an Aussie liner in hand, 2 of my problems were finally solved, but another immediately took their place. I could once again use my Sea Serpent armor, the cold was negated, and my defense was significantly higher. Durability, however, was still a major concern. Alongside that, I would need a new antique atlas, as well as a replacement for the miner's ring I had lost during the battle tower fiasco and never recovered. I made the decision to avoid battle towers on this expedition, not only because they were dangerous, but because they seemed to rarely yield enchanted books, let alone mending books. I carried on throughout the day with middling results. Frustration mounted, but by this point, that feeling had become familiar. Day 171, I carried on, like I always do, and discovered that while the Aussie liner mitigated much of the danger, it wasn't a perfect solution. Freezing to death was still possible, just significantly harder. I made a detour into an ocean structure to see if it could yield anything useful, but it only introduced unnecessary risk and provided nothing of value. I slept in a nearby bed and made a conscious decision to stay disciplined, avoiding risky encounters in favor of slow, steady progress. The search continued through day 172 with rising urgency. My armor was already in rough shape from earlier encounters, and every fight pushed it further into the red. Throughout the day, I came across usable enchanted books and applied them as I went, both to increase my strength and to free up inventory space. I also upgraded my bow's power enchantment to level 6 using an ancient tome, which was a solid improvement. I ended the day in a village. Some progress had been made, but the main objective remained unfulfilled. Day 173. Today I finally broke the drought. I found the first mending book of the expedition. Ideally, I wanted 6 or 7 total to cover all my gear, armor, shield, sword, and bow, but 4 was the absolute minimum, given how damaged my armor already was. To test my current power, I conducted a controlled combat trial against a battle tower golem, which I defeated with ease. Later, I acquired another heart container, bringing me up to 2 full bars of health, and then I slept through the night. Day 174. I encountered a dragon that had spawned in the ocean, and by my estimation it was only stage 3. I decided to engage. I had sufficient healing, a recall potion, for if things went sideways, and a clear advantage. Strength 4 from the Tide Guardian set, with the dragon's primary attacks largely negated by the water. The fight went well, though it still posed a real threat and significantly damaged my armor. Even so, it was a bit of a milestone. After 174 days, I had finally slain my first dragon, even if it was a bit cheesy. I collected its scales, which would allow me to complete my dragon scale armor back at base. Continuing the search, I found another mending book and applied it to my helmet. My boots, however, were left in a near critical condition after the dragon fight, which became a pressing concern. Day 175, the search dragged on and yielded no progress. My boots became effectively unwearable due to the risk of them breaking outright. This was deeply frustrating, because without them, my power wasn't sustainable. Tide Guardian armor simply doesn't have the durability to support prolonged combat without mending, and without consistent strength 4, any forward momentum would eventually collapse into setbacks. On day 176, I nearly learned that lesson the hard way. I had a close encounter with a battle tower golem and was forced to teleport out at the last moment. Without my boots, I was limited to strength 3 and my overall defense was noticeably reduced. It was a sketchy situation, but a fair reminder of what my limits still were. Later that day, I found another mending book, and I immediately applied it to my boots, restoring my full power and, more importantly, making it sustainable. I was back out on day 177, searching until I reached a village with a blacksmith where I was able to apply the enchantment properly. For the first time, I now had a full set of mending armor, a massive relief. I also took note of the durability disparity. My shield and sword had thousands of durability, while my armor pieces barely cleared a few hundred. While they still needed mending eventually, they weren't in immediate danger of breaking. With full mending armor online, I could once again loot battle towers safely. I started with a force battle tower since they contained libraries, but disengaged due to the threat level and slept in the nearby shack in the middle of the nowhere. Day 178, I returned to the grind with a clear cutoff in mind, finished by day 180 and abandoned the mission. The sword was the priority because the shield was easily replaceable. I looted another battle tower, but quickly deemed them inefficient for my purposes and moved on. During my travels, I discovered what appeared to be a level 5 dragon's nest, something I marked on the atlas as a goal for later in the run. I'm not sure when I did it, but apparently I had already found a replacement antique atlas. I didn't note it, and I'm not searching through the footage to figure out exactly when that happened. I also remembered the level up system and began diverting excess XP into it, along with the general skill levels, to boost my overall power wherever possible. I ended the day sleeping in a village. Nothing notable happened on day 179. Nothing particularly good, nothing particularly bad. It was one of those days that simply passed, ending much like many more others before it. Day 180 was much the same. I expanded my search properly to 4 expired battle towers and acquired another heart container, further increasing my health. Beyond that, nothing of value turned up, and so I carried on. Day 181. I carried on and had a few close encounters, mostly with witches. The perplexity debuff was, is, and always will be completely unhinged. At this point, though, I had spent so much time under its effects that it almost wasn't an issue anymore. I had learned to move and fight with inverted controls through sheer repetition. Still, no real progress was made this day.
Day 181 had a close call at the battle tower, but lived it out.
182. Today was a success. I found a mending book, the last one that was required for my sword. While searching for a blacksmith, or at least a way back home, I found another mending book. Now I had what I needed for both my sword and my shield. It was a genuine win, and I immediately began my homeward journey. Day 183, I returned to the vicinity of my base and went out to gather the last bits of experience needed for enchanting. During this time, I ran into one of the most obnoxious effect combinations possible: nausea and spinning. Rather than force it and risk something stupid, I disengaged and hoped I had enough stored XP at home to finish the job. Thankfully I did, and I returned and enchanted my gear. Day 184 and Day 185. The final phase of this operation was obtaining a wither ring, which would negate the wither effect entirely. I already had everything I needed except steel ingots. Steel required sinacite, which was another resource used to create steel alloys. So on day 184 I entered the nether once again. Sinacite was fairly common, but difficult to spot due to how it blends in, and my texture pack didn't make that any easier. This difficulty made the process much slower than expected. Once I had enough, however, I immediately returned to my base, and by the evening of day 185, crafted the steel ingots.
Wither ring. Immunity to wither. 20% chance to wither enemies. Heal 1 hearts when attacking withered enemies. That's pretty good.
On day 186, I crafted the wither ring, which negated the wither's most dangerous effects, its damage over time, leaving only the skull explosions as a serious threat. I also identified gas tears as the final requirement for crafting the ring of regeneration, aside from the nether star itself. I decided to collect the gas tears before fighting the wither. Before entering the nether, I spent some time preparing, and once inside, I did some basic housekeeping to minimize risk, marking my portal on the map in case I traveled farther out, and bringing a cauldron and water bucket, though I quickly discovered that trick didn't work in this version of Minecraft. I killed several ghasts, but none dropped tears. Visibility was poor, and items were difficult to spot on the ground, and dismounting to search for items was extremely dangerous due to the number of hostile mobs roaming the area. Through the wiki, I learned that gas tiers could also drop from cacodemons and beholders, although I hadn't seen any cacodemons, and I chose not to adjust my strategy around beholders because I hadn't seen them spawn in the overworld before. Day 187, I returned to the nether after a brief pit stop in the overworld to hydrate and reset, and by the night of day 187, I had finally killed a gas that dropped the first gas tier. I acquired the second gas tier on day 188, but my rock died in the process. Being on foot in the nether was immediately dangerous, and while that close call raised the stakes, the rest of the day was largely uneventful. On day 189, I carried on hunting gas, which were proving to be frustratingly rare. Eventually, I secured another tier, bringing me to 3 out of 4. To improve my odds, I enabled sound subtitles so I could locate ghasts more easily and avoid despawning them by accidentally moving out of render distance. I made another brief pit stop in the overworld before returning to the nether.
I do, though. It's just crazy. Did I just... Oh my god. Day 190, along with the fact that I haven't found the last gas tier, I just about threw my dragon bone rapier into the lava because I fat fingered the Q key. Oh my god, in 190 days, I don't think I've ever done anything quite so... I don't even know how to describe that.
Day 190 was largely mundane, but I nearly lost my Dragonbone rapier after fat fingering the Q key while flying. Thankfully, it landed on solid ground rather than disappearing into a lake of lava. I also killed another Gask, but couldn't safely recover the tier it dropped, so no real progress was made this day. On day 191, I killed a Ghast that dropped a tier. Retrieving it, however, involved a string of close calls, and my rock died in the process.
Oh no. Oh no. No.
Still, I managed to secure it and the tier and hid until my rock respawned, giving me the final piece I needed. Once airborne again, I flew back towards my portal, and as I approached, an explosion disabled it.
No.
Nearly trapping me in the nether without water. Fortunately, I had iron in my inventory, and gravel spawns naturally in the nether. I made a clutch play and crafted flint and steel, reigniting the portal and escaping safely.
Day 191, got the required flint, made flint and steel, and successfully exfiltrated. Oh my god, that chapter's finally over. All that's left to do now is execute the Wither.
Once back in the overworld, I deactivated the portal and shifted my focus to the next stage. Kill the Wither. I woke up on the day of 192 with a single explicit goal in mind for today. Kill my first Wither. I searched for a suitable area nearby, and once everything was in place, I summoned it.
Good. Come here, Mr. Witherblood. Oh wait, that's the wrong...
The fight began immediately. It went largely how I expected it, actually. Nothing about it felt meaningfully different from vanilla. So, I mean, the Wither isn't really one of Rlcraft's quote-unquote bosses, and my power 6 bow shredded it during the ranged phase. I took the fight over water to take advantage of my strength bonus for the melee phase, though my rock died in the process. At one point, while trying to eat a golden apple for the absorption buff, I accidentally used a recall potion and teleported back to my base. A stupid but generally funny mistake. With my rock still on cooldown, I started trekking back on foot. Once I made it to the general area, I resummoned the rock and re-engaged the Wither, the time fully committing to the water. Its health drained rapidly. The combination of the Dragonbone Rapier and Strength 4 was overwhelming. The Wither could do little more than bob helplessly as I cut it down. It became clear that I'd been wildly overprepared. This wasn't a challenge, it was an execution. I killed the Wither and obtained another star. Immediately I decided to go for round 2, spawning a rare Wither variant with Rushed, Cloaking, and Ninja. It didn't fare much better. I defeated it decisively, claimed a second Nether Star, and returned to base to sleep. On day 193 I gathered everything needed to craft the Ring of Regeneration. Then I panicked, because I put the items into the crafting grid in the wrong order, and thought the recipe was broken. I even started searching forums before realizing my mistake. Once crafted, the power increase was immediate and obvious. This wasn't just natural regeneration, like vanilla, it was the actual regeneration effect. I could heal even while hungry, poisoned, or suffering from status effects. With that in place, I decided I wanted to end these 200 days with a proper challenge. I started with a Mega Battle Tower. The regeneration gave me a massive advantage, but it still wasn't foolproof. Higher tier enemies could shred durability faster than mending and regeneration could keep up if I wasn't careful. On day 194 I determined that Mega Battle Towers were largely manageable. Still, I disengaged after encountering the Perplexity debuff. Its duration was too long, and fighting through inverted controls risked wasting a meaningful portion of the remaining days doing nothing. I spent some time deciding how to use my remaining Nether Star, and determined that the best option was saving it for the Black Dragon Scale, and eventually the Multicolored Dragon Scale, to counter Wither and poison effects. I considered crafting a Waystone, but I decided I would simply kill another Wither for that later. With that settled, I shifted focus to gear maintenance, XP grinding, and searching for meaningful challenges to test my power. I slept in a random village that night. On day 195, I began revisiting structures I had previously considered unmanageable, starting with a dungeon, and I dominated it completely. Combat posed no real threat thanks to my armor and regeneration, witches remained the only meaningful danger due to their wide range of debuffs, but even they were manageable. The loot itself wasn't particularly impressive, but the experience gain was massive. I leveled up and unlocked a perk that granted strength 1 whenever I killed a hostile mob. That alone significantly increased grinding efficiency, even when I wasn't benefiting from the water-based strength bonus. I ended the day satisfied, but with the realization that dungeons and battle towers had become trivial. They no longer offered anything meaningful beyond XP, healing items, and the occasional enchantment. Day 196, I was still looking for a real challenge, and I decided to take on a Cyclops in a one-on-one fight. While it might seem reckless, I still had a recall potion, bound to a hotkey, allowing me to escape instantly if things turned dangerous. The Cyclops proved to be a more serious threat than most encounters I'd faced recently, but I persisted and killed it. That was when I decided to finally deal with a dragon that had been terrorizing both me and the nearby city for about 100 days. The fight started intensely, but it didn't take long to establish control. Using the rock, I outpaced the dragon's attacks and caught it in a loop where it couldn't effectively retaliate. Even if it had, I had a fire resistance potion ready to negate its damage. I killed the dragon later that night. The village was safer, and so was I. I extracted its blood and gathered its scales, but I wasn't finished. I still wanted more. Shortly after, I killed a second Stage 3 dragon. Dragons were no longer existential threats. The fact that I could clear them almost at will felt like a turning point. On day 197, I set out again in search of a meaningful challenge, and found a major quality of life upgrade, the Dragon Canteen. It automatically purified water, completely removing concerns about parasites and a thirsty debuff. I crafted it using the Fire Dragon heart I had obtained from the Fire Dragon, and the impact was immediate and noticeable. I continued exploring, encountering a level 5 sea serpent, which I killed, and I also took out a battle tower golem without issue. By the end of the day, I found a magic mirror, essentially an infinite recall potion, but I couldn't use it yet due to the level 32 magic requirement. But I marked it as a solid goal for 300 days. I slept that night on a random boat. On day 198, I tested my combat effectiveness against a sea serpent in a full head-on melee fight. It was tougher than the dragon, the cyclops, or any battle tower golem, not because of raw damage, but because its hitbox was inconsistent and not easily cheesed in the water. Still, I killed it. That was enough proof for me. Satisfied, I pivoted to what I wanted as a symbolic end to these 200 days, clearing a 4-spired battle tower. I did exactly that, working my way through floor by floor, cutting down enemies, and taking particular satisfaction in removing witches from the equation entirely. I carried on through day 199, clearing the remaining spires. There was pushback and the occasional annoyance, like creepers blew apart one of the rooms, and a few falls back to the bottom set me back, but nothing I couldn't overcome with the help of the rock. By the end of the day, both end crystals were destroyed, both spires defeated, and the tower was effectively clear. Anything left behind, stray mobs, spawners, or loot, didn't matter to me. I teleported out and returned home, reflecting on the progress I had made, the setbacks I had endured, all the close calls, and every small victory. And of course, the endless cycles of frustration and triumph. I brought the rock home with me, entered the base, and at the end of it all, I slept. It was finally over. I suffered far more in these 100 days than I ever did in the first 100 days. In my original run, death meant nothing. Setbacks were procedural, frustrating, expected, and ultimately temporary. Every expansion of requirements demanded more effort, but it never demanded that I lose something. That changed this time. This time I had something to lose. And I almost lost it. So many freaking times. There were moments in this run where I genuinely considered giving up, but I didn't. I kept going. I kept pushing the stone. Death wasn't failure. Almost losing my items wasn't a failure. Deep winter didn't cause me to fail. But giving up would have. And I never did. So if there's one thing I want you to take away from this run, it's this. Don't give up either. Not when it's hard. Not when it's unfair. Not when it feels like the whole world is actively working against you. Just keep pushing the stone.